Thank you, everybody, for coming to the College Football Betting with Aaron Torres YouTube channel. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, click that subscribe button. It helps our channel grow. It helps our audience grow. I appreciate it more than you know as we're talking college football on this channel year round. Appreciate your support. Click that subscribe button. Let's get to the big one in the Palmetto State. It is a noon Eastern kickoff. Clemson hosting South Carolina. Clemson, believe it or not, actually a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under in this one at 49.5. And what's so interesting, one of the few games this weekend, Texas A&M is one. Both teams have huge stakes coming into this one. Both teams probably on the fringes, the outside of the college football playoff conversation. I know I've said it 30 times, so if you're listening beginning to end, I apologize. But we are recording on Monday. We don't know what the rankings look like, but there is conversation about two different things after this past weekend. Ole Miss loses, Alabama loses, Texas A&M is now in a position where they have to win probably at least their next game, if not their next two. But the conversation has been this, is one, if we ever do get down to 3-loss SEC teams, South Carolina feels like they should probably be at the top of that list. And then, oh, by the way, Clemson sitting there at 9-2. If they win this game, that would obviously be a great win to close the regular season. Really, the only loss of the two losses, one could be to the SEC champ in Georgia. And so I only bring it up because you look at Clemson, and there are a lot of people saying that not necessarily that they should get into the college football playoff, but if something weird happens, if Notre Dame loses to USC, if Penn State loses this weekend, if Indiana loses to Purdue, could Clemson get in as an at-large? Obviously, if they do not make the ACC championship game, that is probably also a note I should leave here as well. SMU has clinched a spot in the ACC championship game. If Miami beats Syracuse, Miami goes to Charlotte for the ACC championship game. If Miami loses, then Clemson would have a chance to play for the ACC title. And so really, whether they win or lose, it'd be moot if they go to the ACC title game. But let's focus on this game. Let's focus on South Carolina to start. And I got to start giving credit where it's due. I have not historically been a Shane Beamer guy. I've never, nothing personal. I just, I've thought he's a fine coach, whatever. I got to be real. I did not see this coming. Okay. To use the Shaq meme, Shane Beamer, I was not familiar with your game. So credit to Shane Beamer. Early in the season, this team took a few losses, but if you watch those games, the Alabama game, they easily could have won. The LSU game, if Lenore Sellers, their starting quarterback, doesn't get hurt, they probably win that game. And so they're 8-3. They've obviously got a couple great wins, including Texas A&M at home. If they win this game, it is going to be a strong argument that they should be in the conversation as a 3-loss SEC team. And they're really, to their credit, doing it on both sides of the football. Because early in the season, we all talked about the defense and the defensive front, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But credit where it's due. Their starting quarterback, Lenore Sellers, has really emerged over the last 2 or 3 weeks, okay? Really the last 4 if you think about it, because in his last 4 games, so since the first game of November, which was A&M, Lenore Sellers, how about this? 12 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions, okay? And he has 17 on the season, 17 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. So before November 1st, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Since November 1st, 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He is improving. Rocket Sanders has had a couple big games on the ground. And then it is always worth noting, that defense is elite and that defense is special. Top 15 in total defense, top 15 in scoring defense, number 12 in rush defense. And those defensive linemen get after it. Kyle Kennard, Dylan Stewart. Kyle Kennard, listen, when Texas A&M played South Carolina, Mike Elko said he believed Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart will be first-round picks. Kyle Kennard this coming year, Dylan Stewart when he's eligible. But 39 total sacks, that is 3rd in the country. For Clemson, listen, gave South Carolina some credit earlier, gave Shane Beamer some credit. We got to give Dabo some credit as well. Because when you look at Dabo, when you look at this program, listen, I was one of those guys. After the season opening loss to Georgia, I was one of those guys. Dabo's losing it. He's lost his fastball. College football has passed him by. They have no depth because of the portal. They're not very good. And then you see that quietly they have gotten better. And the big reason that Clemson is sitting here at 9-2 and on the fringes of the playoff conversation is because that Garrett Riley offense is finally clicking. Okay. So we all know, but remember 2 years ago, Garrett Riley was coming off a run to the national championship game as TCU's offensive coordinator. He was the hottest name in the coordinator market. That was the year that Jimbo Fisher, remember, was trying to hire a coordinator. He ends up with Bobby Petrino. Nick Saban is looking for an offensive coordinator. He ends up hiring Tommy Rees. Well, Garrett Riley ends up at Clemson. Last year, it was a struggle. This year, they have been phenomenal, okay? You look at this offense and you look at what they have done. Number 6 in the country in total offense, top 25 in pass offense and pass rushing offense. So there's a lot of balance there. And just look at the point totals. We said it with Notre Dame. I don't care who you're playing. 66 against App State, 59 against NC State, 40 against Stanford, 49 against Wake Forest, 48 against Virginia. Last couple weeks on the road, they did struggle 24 apiece at Pitt and at Virginia Tech, but they're at home. I got to give Cade Klubnik a little bit of credit as well. He was a guy that I was very critical of last year. 29 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions on the season. He also, oh, by the way, he's also got 5 rushing touchdowns as well. Phil Maffa in the backfield. So you look at this game. Top 20 matchup, college football playoff implications. Who is going to be Torres' official pick? I'll just say it. I actually like Clemson to cover the 2.5. Okay. And so let me explain why. This is not a knock on South Carolina. It's not that they're terrible, but a couple things stand out. One, home field advantage matters. We see it every single week in college football. I'm sure Dabo would much rather have a 7:30 kickoff than a noon Eastern kickoff, but home field matters. But here's the other thing. This is what stands out. One, listen, I'm not trying to diminish what South Carolina has done the last 5 weeks. They are on a 5-game winning streak. As I said, Lenora Sellers is playing out of his mind. He deserves all the credit in the world. But let's look at who they've beat. They won at Oklahoma. That was the game where, if you remember, they were up 21-0 in a game where they were up 21-0. What was it, about 6 minutes into the game? They scored on the opening drive and then a pick six and then a fumble return for a touchdown. So they jumped on them early. And then from there, they have beaten, this is who they've beaten. They beat Texas A&M at home. Great game. Don't want to take anything away from them. At Vandy, Missouri at home by 4, Wofford last week. So basically, in that stretch, you got a couple home games. The road games were one game where the other team basically spotted you 21 points, and the other one was Vandy, where you probably had more fans there than they did, okay? So it's not a knock, but it is going to be completely different going on the road to Clemson. I know you'll have plenty of your own fans if you're a South Carolina fan, but I don't think that it changes the fact that that is just going to be a really tough place to play. But here's the other thing. Clemson's a really good football team, and Clemson is a really good football team. And the one thing I'll say about Clemson is that with South Carolina, we talked about the pass rush. We talked about the run defense. The one thing about South Carolina, they have been a little bit susceptible. If you can keep your quarterback upright in the pocket, that secondary is very good. It is not elite. As a matter of fact, I think it's worth noting. Look at South Carolina's 2 losses this year. Who are they to? Well, the 3 losses. They lose to Alabama, a game they easily could have won. But the 2 other losses, they were to LSU when Garrett Nussmeier threw for just under 300 yards and about 8 yards per completion. And the second loss was to Ole Miss. Now, part of it was Ole Miss defense was phenomenal in that game, but Jackson Dart threw for about 300 yards in that game as well. So I don't think it's a coincidence. The 2 best pass offenses that you've seen, you've struggled against, the 2 best pass offenses you've seen, you've lost to. And I just think that Clemson is flying under the radar. With Clemson, the offense is clicking. The defense is probably a little bit better than people realize. You know, you look at the raw stats and you sit there and say, oh, they're not that good. And it's like, well, I mean, that's not totally fair because of the fact that if you look at Clemson, a lot of the points they've given up are games that have long since been decided. You know, they gave up 31 points against Virginia. 21 of them were in the fourth quarter. They beat NC State, gave up 35 against NC State. 21 were in the third quarter. 28 were in the second half when the game was long since decided. So I like Clemson to win. I like Clemson to cover. I'll say something in the neighborhood of like 24-16, 24-17. Clemson wins. Clemson stays alive in the college football playoff race. We'll see, by the way, if they can get to the ACC title.